We often set ourselves some goals. We want to persuade our boss to approve an initiative. We want to convince our friends to watch the movie we prefer. We take action to reach this goal, but we fail. What went wrong? Probably our behavior, which has obviously been ineffective. But how can we assure that our behavior is effective? The keys are observation and listening. Philosopher Epictetus said, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we ought to listen twice as much as we speak. It is necessary to take into account the person in front of us, carefully observing as many variables as possible, so as to reach an emotional profiling of the interlocutor, made of values, beliefs, behaviors, nonverbal communication, posture, facial expressions, and tone of voice of the interlocutor. But what is communication? By communication, we mean a process of exchange of information and influence between 2 or more people taking place in a context, which defines the kind of communication. I won't talk, for example, to the mentor of my thesis as I told to my university colleague. Our life is communication. Activities, relationships, emotions are all based on a constant communicative activity that is born with us and never abandons us. The first axiom of communication, formulated by Paul Václavic, shows that one cannot not communicate. Everything one does is a message. Activity, inactivity, words, silence, all have a message value. According to the studies, information coming from a communicative exchange passes 7% through words, 38% through voice tones, and 55% through body language. This shows the great importance and the absolute centrality of gestures, as well as facial expressions, which are the same all over the world. The practical act of communication, therefore, is based on the absolute certainty of the fact that each of us interacts within a circular system where the behavior of each member influences the other's one. Generally, it is thought that knowing how to communicate is something natural, innate, instinctive, but it's not that easy for many people. Knowing how to communicate with others can be a competence that can be acquired and improved. There are, in fact, different techniques to achieve this goal, even with the most difficult people, that take on the irrational part of the interlocutor. One of them is the mirroring technique, which consists in the creation of a strong empathy through the mirroring of his posture and his way to talk. These kind of techniques should not be considered as a mimicking of every interlocutor's movement in real time, which would inevitably make him stiff, but as a way to emphasize similarities. The result, in fact, is that the interlocutor records who performs the action as a person similar to him. These processes are made possible by a number of neurons used to encode these nonverbal gestures. Who, according to psychiatrist J. Haley, has managed to implement an effective and persuasive communication is Jesus, whom he describes in his book The Power Tactics of Jesus Christ and Other Essays as one of the first men who led great struggles for power. Haley points out how Jesus devised an organization strategy that conquered the Roman Empire first and then controlled the fate of the Western world for the following years, which consisted in attacking power by organizing the poor and the defenseless. He presented himself to the community as a prophet, the only one who could interpret the authentic religion, taking advantage of the fact that the population was unhappy due to Roman taxation, oppression, and the private interests of the ecclesiastical families, and that the structure of power was fragmented due to difference between the rich and the clergy, geographical divisions, internal conflicts within the church, and the prevarication of Roman governors. He carefully chose his followers, who became more than 70, whom he used as fishers of men, and acquired more and more authority with his reputation as a healer, making conformity and change coincide, and repeatedly attacking the religious leaders of his time, both verbally and physically, when, for example, he attacked the money changers in the temple. And this was used by him as another power tactic, since the bolder the attack, the more important the attacker becomes if the offense has a vast echo. He also invented the surrender strategy. When 2 wolves fight and one of them is about to succumb, the latter raises his head, offering his throat to the rival, who freezes and doesn't kill the other wolf. In this way, the loser dominates the winner without doing anything, because hitting a defenseless rival, guilt poisons victory. Although Jesus preached this principle throughout his whole life, he never turned the other cheek firsthand. In fact, he always replied to the text with further criticism. His execution, however, extended his control even after his death. Jesus' strategies have also influenced the behavior of mass leaders, from Hitler to Mao Zedong, despite the fact that they have always denied his influence in their official speeches. To conclude, man has always been considered as a social being that lives in a context, whose peculiarity lies precisely in interpersonal relationships. Today, however, communication has taken on greater importance, as shown by the exponential growth of university faculties linked to this field. Basically, it has been concluded that the role of a communicator is fundamental in every kind of job. But few people really know how to manage this process. People often live and communicate letting themselves to be overwhelmed and transported by their circumstances, but a real communicator develops an almost total awareness of his inner reality and is able to use it for his own advantage in every situation. But the most important concept I have realized is that in order to be effective in communication, relationships, and objectives, there must be coherence between intention, words, and action. If these three components do not match, the goal is not achieved.